He has not confessed to authorities. He is not cooperating. But all the people around him are cooperating, and I think that's very important.
Tyler Robinson, the man who shot and killed Charlie Kirk, now knows his grim fate, yet he's shown no sign of remorse. Will he face the electric chair and unrepentant man? Or will he finally spill the beans on what his motivations were? Let's break it all down. The hunt and capture. The manhunt that followed Charlie Kirk's assassination would prove to be as dramatic and revealing as the crime itself, ultimately leading to the identification and capture of a suspect whose background would challenge many assumptions about political violence in America. The suspect has been publicly identified as Tyler Robinson, a 22-year-old Utah native from Washington County in southern Utah. What made this case particularly intriguing from an investigative standpoint was not just the identity of the killer, but the circumstances surrounding his capture and the wealth of evidence that law enforcement was able to compile against him. Robinson was arrested on September 12, 2025, ending a 33-hour manhunt involving the FBI, local law enforcement, and a $100,000 reward offered by the FBI. The relatively swift conclusion to the manhunt was due in large part to the cooperation of Robinson's own family, highlighting the complex personal dynamics that would come to define this case. While the assassination had been carried out with cold precision and apparent planning, the aftermath revealed a suspect who seemed unprepared for the consequences of his actions. He was taken into custody without incident after his father recognized him in grainy surveillance photos released by police and urged him to surrender. This detail would prove particularly significant in understanding the family dynamics at play, as it revealed a father willing to turn in his own son for the sake of justice. Despite the personal anguish such a decision must...
He's become radicalized. So many things have been learned about him so quickly. He's become totally radicalized and crazy, and it must have been traumatic because the parents are conservative people, supposed to be very nice people, living in Utah, and the father turns into son. Boy, that's a tough deal.
Even President Trump acknowledged the difficult position Robinson's father found himself in, recognizing the extraordinary nature of a parent's decision to facilitate their own child's arrest for such a heinous crime. The evidence compiled against Robinson was overwhelming in both its volume and its damning implications. Forensic evidence strongly ties Robinson to the scene. DNA from a towel and screwdriver recovered near the discarded rifle matches Robinson's profile, as confirmed by FBI Director Kash Patel. The physical evidence alone would have been sufficient to build a strong case, but investigators were able to uncover an even more comprehensive picture of Robinson's guilt through digital forensics and witness testimony. Perhaps most revealing was the written evidence that investigators were able to recover despite Robinson's attempts to destroy it. Investigators recovered evidence of a destroyed note at Robinson's home, reconstructed through forensics, which stated he had the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, and I'm going to take it. This note, painstakingly reconstructed by forensic experts, provided clear evidence of premeditation and intent, crucial elements in establishing the charges that would ultimately be filed against Robinson. The digital evidence was equally damning, revealing a pattern of behavior and communication that painted a clear picture of Robinson's state of mind leading up to the assassination. A text message exchange with an unidentified individual showed Robinson expressing hatred for Kirk and stating, "I have the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, and he was going to do it because of his hatred for what Charlie stood for." Along with the phrase, "Some hatred cannot be negotiated with." These communications revealed not just intent, but also the ideological motivation that drove Robinson to commit this act of political violence. Even more revealing were Robinson's actions in the hours immediately following his crime. Hours before his arrest, Robinson appeared to confess on the Discord chat platform, messaging friends about taking responsibility for the shooting, as confirmed by a Discord spokesperson. This digital confession, combined with the physical and circumstantial evidence, created an ironclad case against Robinson that would be extremely difficult for any defense attorney to challenge. The investigation also revealed disturbing details about Robinson's preparation and mindset leading up to the assassination. FBI Co-Put Director Dan Bongino described Robinson's digital footprint as showing an obsession with Kirk, including multiple warning signs. This obsession, documented through his online activities and communications, suggested that the assassination was not a spontaneous act of violence, but rather the culmination of a growing fixation that had been building over time. Particularly intriguing was the role that Robinson's personal relationships may have played in his motivation to commit this crime. Robinson's romantic partner, who is transgender and in the process of transitioning from male to female, has been cooperative with investigators. And is not a suspect. The timing of Kirk's assassination, coming as it did after his public comments describing transgender individuals as an abomination to God, raised questions about whether Robinson's personal relationship had influenced his decision to target Kirk. Specifically, The investigation revealed a complex portrait of a young man whose background seemed to contradict many of the typical profiles associated with political violence. Community members described him as very quiet and someone who kept to himself with no prior criminal history mentioned in reports. Community members described him as very quiet and someone who kept to himself with no prior criminal history mentioned in reports. Interview.
The kid was smart, quiet. He never caused any problems.
Are you shocked by this?
It was a shock. Oh yes, I am shocked. Very shocked.
This testimony from those who knew Robinson personally painted a picture of someone whose outward demeanor gave little indication of the violence he was capable of committing. Perhaps most significant was the ideological transformation that Robinson appeared to have undergone in the period leading up to the assassination. His family is described as staunchly Republican, but Robinson had reportedly veered left politically in recent years. This political evolution, combined with his online activities and personal relationships, created a perfect storm of factors that ultimately led to his decision to commit this act of political violence. The method by which Robinson carried out the assassination also revealed significant preparation and skill. This observation highlighted one of the most troubling aspects of the case, that Robinson's upbringing in a gun-owning family had provided him with the very skills that made his assassination of Kirk possible. The evidence compiled during the investigation revealed not just Robinson's guilt, but also the complex web of factors that had contributed to his radicalization and ultimate decision to commit political violence. As investigators continued to piece together the full story of how and why Robinson had decided to target Charlie Kirk, they uncovered a narrative that challenged many assumptions about political violence in America and raised difficult questions about the role of online communities, personal relationships, and political discourse in radicalizing young Americans. The assassination that shook America. The afternoon of September 10, 2025 was supposed to be just another routine speaking engagement for Charlie Kirk, a man who had built his career on challenging liberal orthodoxy and mobilizing young conservatives across American college campuses. The incident occurred mid-sentence as Kirk addressed a crowd of about 3,000 during a Q&A session on topics including transgender rights and mass shootings. In what would tragically become his final public statement, Kirk had described transgender individuals as an abomination to God. Words that would take on haunting significance in light of what investigators would later uncover about his killer's personal life. The precision of the attack was chilling in its execution and devastating in its outcome. Authorities described the attack as a targeted assassination, with Kirk struck by a single long-range gunshot to the neck, severing his jugular vein and causing instant death. The clinical nature of the killing spoke to careful planning and preparation, far removed from the passionate, impulsive act of violence that many political assassinations represent. This was not a crime of opportunity, but rather a methodically executed plan that had been brewing in the mind of its perpetrator for an unknown period of time. What made the attack even more sinister was the vantage point chosen by the assassin. The shooter fired from a rooftop position using a rifle with engraved bullet casings referencing Reddit culture and other dark places of the internet. The tactical advantage of shooting from high to low, as one expert would later observe, was like shooting fish in a barrel, providing the assassin with the easiest possible shot while maximizing the difficulty for security personnel to detect the threat until it was far too late. The immediate aftermath of the shooting was chaos incarnate, with thousands of attendees suddenly thrust into a nightmare scenario that none could have anticipated. Kirk's widow, Erica Kirk, was present at the event with their young children, adding an additional layer of tragedy to an already devastating scene. The image of a widow and her children witnessing the violent end of their husband and father would become one of the most haunting aspects of this entire ordeal, serving as a stark reminder of the human cost of political violence. But perhaps most disturbing of all were the cryptic messages left behind by the killer. Messages that would provide crucial insights into his mindset and motivations. The bullet casings recovered from the scene told a story of someone deeply immersed in internet culture and driven by ideological hatred. Inscriptions on a fired casing read, "Notices bulges, capital O, what's this question mark?" Inscriptions on the 3 unfired casings read, "Hey, fascist exclamation point catch exclamation point. Up arrow symbol, right arrow and symbol, and 3 down arrow symbols." A second unfired casing read, "Oh, Bella Ciao, Bella Ciao, Bella Ciao, Ciao Ciao," and a third unfired casing read, "If you read this, you are gay. LMAO." These messages, bizarre as they may seem to those unfamiliar with certain corners of internet culture, would prove to be crucial pieces of evidence in understanding the killer's digital footprint and the online communities that may have influenced his radicalization. The sophistication of the attack raised immediate questions about security protocols and whether adequate measures had been in place to protect Kirk during his campus appearance. Interview.
This really kind of upset me because I feel that this was a kind of a lack of security, frankly. People talk because he wasn't a political candidate. But there's an assembly of 3,000 people in a fishbowl, basically sitting ducks, as was Charlie. And there was no rooftop surveillance.
As one retired police lieutenant would later observe, the absence of rooftop surveillance was a critical security failure that could have been prevented with basic precautions. The weapon used in the assassination was itself a testament to the killer's preparation and intent. The rifle, described as a long-range weapon capable of accurate shots at significant distances, was not the type of firearm that someone would casually acquire for a spontaneous act of violence. This was a tool chosen specifically for its lethality and effectiveness at the distance from which the shot was taken, further underscoring the premeditated nature of the crime. As news of the assassination spread across the nation, it became clear that this was not simply the loss of a conservative commentator, but rather an attack on the very foundations of American political discourse. The assassination prompted national mourning, with President Donald Trump ordering flags at half-staff, Vice President J.D. Vance hosting a tribute episode of Kirk's podcast, and vigils held across the U.S., including at Turning Point USA headquarters in Phoenix and the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. The political ramifications were immediate and far-reaching. It also sparked debates on political violence, with Vance and others blaming left-wing extremism for fostering the environment that led to the killing. The assassination had accomplished what Kirk himself had never been able to achieve in life. It had unified conservative voices across the political spectrum in their condemnation of political violence and their determination to seek justice for his death. What made this assassination particularly significant in the context of American political violence was its targeting of a non-elected figure whose influence came not from holding office, but from his ability to shape public opinion and mobilize political activism. Charlie Kirk represented a new generation of political influences whose power derived from their media platforms and grassroots organizing capabilities rather than traditional political institutions. His assassination, therefore, represented an attack not just on Kirk himself, but on this entire model of political engagement that has become increasingly important in the digital age. The investigation that followed would reveal a complex web of evidence, motivation, and ideological extremism that would challenge many preconceived notions about political violence in America. As law enforcement agencies mobilized their resources to track down the killer, they would uncover a story that was both deeply personal and broadly political, involving online radicalization, relationship dynamics, and the dangerous intersection of political ideology with personal grievance, justice, politics, and the path forward. The arrest of Tyler Robinson marked the beginning of what promises to be one of the most closely watched criminal proceedings in recent American history. As prosecutors prepare to seek the ultimate penalty against a young man whose crime has shaken the foundations of political discourse in America, Robinson is being held without bail in a Utah jail under special watch due to concerns over his safety and potential non-cooperation. The significance of this case extends far beyond the prosecution of a single individual, touching on fundamental questions about political violence, online radicalization, and the state of American democracy in the digital age. The legal proceedings against Robinson have been fast-tracked, reflecting both the severity of the charges and the intense public interest in seeing justice served. Robinson is scheduled to appear in court in Provo, Utah on September 16, 2025, facing aggravated murder charges. The decision to charge Robinson with aggravated murder rather than simple murder reflects prosecutors' belief that they can prove the additional elements necessary to make Robinson eligible for the death penalty under Utah law. The facility where Robinson is currently being held tells its own story about the seriousness with which authorities are treating this case. Tyler Robinson is currently being held without bail at the Utah County Jail located at 3075 North Main Street in Spanish Fork, Utah. He is housed in the jail's Special Housing Unit, SHU, under a special watch protocol, which involves heightened monitoring due to the severity of his charges, potential behavioral issues, and suicide risk assessments. This level of security reflects not only the gravity of the charges against Robinson, but also the high-profile nature of the case and the potential for retaliation or harm to come to the defendant. The charges that Robinson faces carry the most severe penalties available under both Utah state law and federal jurisdiction. If convicted of aggravated murder, Robinson faces the possibility of the death penalty pursued by Utah prosecutors. President Donald Trump and Utah Governor Spencer Cox have publicly called for the death penalty, increasing pressure on prosecutors to file a notice of intent within 60 days of arraignment. The political response to Kirk's assassination has been swift and far-reaching, revealing deep divisions in American society about the nature of political violence and its underlying causes. The federal government's response has been particularly noteworthy, both for its scope and its political implications. President Donald Trump responded swiftly to the assassination of Charlie Kirk on September 10, 2025, by ordering all U.S. flags at federal buildings, military installations, embassies, and other government properties to be flown at half-staff until sunset on September 14, 2025. The government's response went well beyond symbolic gestures. However, Trump blamed the radical left for fostering an environment of political violence through hateful rhetoric that compared conservatives like Kirk to Nazis and the world's worst mass murderers, calling it directly responsible for the terrorism we're seeing today and vowing to hold accountable those who fund it and support it. This rhetoric, while politically charged, reflects the genuine anger and concern that many conservatives feel about what they perceive as a growing climate of political violence directed against their movement. Vice President J.D. Vance's response was equally significant, both for its personal nature and its political implications. Vice President J.D. Vance, a close friend of Kirk, who credited him with supporting his 2021 Senate run and 2024 VP nomination, hosted a special episode of The Charlie Kirk Show on September 15th from the White House, calling Kirk the smartest political operative I ever met and vowing to carry on the mantle of his legacy. This unprecedented decision to use the White House as a venue for honoring a slain political activist underscored the deep personal relationships that existed between Kirk and the highest levels of government. The investigation into Robinson's motivations has revealed uncomfortable truths about the process of political radicalization in the digital age. Officials have described Robinson as holding a leftist ideology and being radicalized online through exposure to dark corners of the internet, including Reddit and other platforms. This finding challenges many assumptions about political violence and suggests that the problem of online radicalization extends across the political spectrum. This observation highlights one of the most challenging aspects of understanding political violence: the tendency for people to project their own political biases onto the motivations of perpetrators rather than examining the complex reality of interview.
But the point here is, clearly the shooter hated Charlie Kirk. That we know, that we can say for sure. But in terms of the theories that are being spouted here, they are wild and completely without evidence.
This observation highlights one of the most challenging aspects of understanding political violence: the tendency for people to project their own political biases onto the motivations of perpetrators rather than examining the complex reality of what drives individuals to commit such acts. Perhaps most troubling of all is what Robinson's case reveals about the failure of traditional safeguards to prevent political violence. Interview.
But every single one of these analyses that I've heard, and actually even calling it an analysis is a little bit generous, something that's been missing from this is that Trump and MAGA and Republicans in their various forms have been telling us for years that certain traits are good and godly and they are the best environment for a kid to be brought up in. They tell us if you grow up in a Christian household, that's the best thing for kids. It's the best. But in this case, growing up in this...
Robinson's background challenged many conservative assumptions about what factors protect young people from radicalization and violence. The security failures that allowed Robinson to carry out his attack have prompted serious discussions about how to better protect public figures and political events.
There was no rooftop surveillance. We just learned this a year ago. And I talked to my colleagues about that, and their first thing is, well, we can't put people on roofs all the time. I'm not talking about putting Navy snipers on the roof. I'm talking to put a volunteer with a radio or a cell phone on the highest point.
These observations from experienced law enforcement professionals highlight practical steps that could be taken to prevent similar attacks in the future. The case against Robinson appears to be overwhelming, but his defense team will likely explore several avenues in their attempt to save his life. The combination of physical evidence, digital communications, witness testimony, and Robinson's own admissions creates a nearly insurmountable challenge for any defense attorney.
Confessed to authorities. He is not cooperating, but all the people around him are cooperating, and I think that's very important. We're collecting much more, including forensic evidence that is coming back from Quantico.
Despite Robinson's refusal to cooperate with authorities, the evidence against him continues to mount. The broader implications of this case extend far beyond the fate of Tyler Robinson himself. The assassination of Charlie Kirk represents a watershed moment in American political discourse, forcing a reckoning with the toxic nature of online political culture and its potential to inspire real-world violence. The case has led to firings of employees celebrating the killing, including United Airlines pilots, and warnings from officials like Florida Governor Ron DeSantis about sanctions for inflammatory statements. As The legal proceedings against Robinson move forward. They will serve as a test of the American justice system's ability to handle cases involving political violence in the digital age. The evidence suggests that Robinson's conviction is all but certain, but the questions raised by his case about online radicalization, political violence, and the protection of public figures will continue to challenge American society long after Robinson's fate has been decided. The death of Charlie Kirk and the arrest of Tyler Robinson represent more than just another case of political violence in America. They represent a fundamental challenge to the foundations of democratic discourse and a stark reminder of the real-world consequences that can flow from the toxic political culture that has increasingly come to dominate American public life. As Robinson awaits his day in court, the nation grapples with the uncomfortable truths that his case has revealed about the state of political discourse in America and the work that must be done to prevent future tragedies of this magnitude. Thank you for watching this video. If you'd like to watch another fascinating video like this, click on one of the boxes on your screen right.